thanks everyone for joining us to the transport webinar. So we're going to be talking about public transport as well as private transport, as in cars, vans, and all that sort of stuff. Want to introduce the panelists. Cassandra from V-Line, got Peter Van Benthem from AQA, Anthony Gray, got Ray Jordan from All Aboard, Susana, got Jack, Sara from Travelers Aid, Matt Lennox to talk about the multi-purpose taxi program, and Jacinta from PTV. So thanks guys for joining us. What we're going to do, if anyone out there is listening and you've got any questions, you can type in your question in the Q&A button. I'm not sure if you can see that, but down the bottom, if you've got a computer, or there's a chat function as well. And we'll keep an eye on those questions as they come through. And at the end, or towards the end, we'll open up a Q&A where we'll bring everyone, if they want to be face-to-face. That's all the participants, not the panelists. So, yeah, thank you guys again for joining us. I'm going to start with a presentation, and I'll get Cassandra to first talk about V-Line, I guess, and Josh Hose as well. So he's got lived experience about using V-Lines, and he can talk about what his experience has been as well. So I'm just sharing my screen now.
Do you want me to share mine, or?
Actually, yeah, you share yours, Cassandra, and I'll throw mine on afterwards.
Yeah, so one second, let me just start this. So we've got a few questions traveling with V-Line. So how do people in wheelchairs access V-Line trains? Do I have a photo of a coach just to represent that you can travel on coaches as well? However, that people traveling in a wheelchair on V-Line trains would use a ramp deployed by our conductors on board. And then where that's not able to occur, if it's a lack of a BZM or accessible car on a long distance train, we would be organising alternative transport. Our supports that we offer for customers with disabilities are communication access tools. So in the photo, there is a staff member using a picture board with a customer in a mobility aid. We have boarding solutions such as ramps, and are currently looking at other boarding solutions. Conductor support on board. There is a conductor on every single V-Line train, and some of our long distance have two, so they are available to assist customers. Accessible toilets on board services. Boarding assistance zones at all V-Line stations, so conductors are trained to look at those areas to make sure that they pick up on anyone that requires assistance. And hearing loops at all stations for those who have hearing impairments. We're also working on some social scripts and other supports for our customers with disabilities. As I touched on just before, so if a bus or a train is not accessible, you will need to speak with staff, whether it be station staff or the conductor, and let them know that you're not able to board using your aid. They will then arrange alternative transport in the form of a taxi for you to get to your destination station. So we do run a station-to-station service, but that's how you would gain assistance there. If you are being harassed by another passenger, you would be able to speak with your conductor as they're passing through. There are also what we call P's alarms within trains. So if you hold it down for 3 seconds, it will alert the conductor that someone in that carriage does need assistance, and they're able to then come down. A little light shows in the conductor's cabin that the carriage needs assistance in there. If you aren't able to access a toilet on board, it's again another conductor role is played there, and we can always arrange where possible to stop somewhere that if there is an accessible toilet, or arrange alternative transport so that your taxi is able to stop along the route if you do need to use those kind of services. So that's it for my presentation. Let me just stop sharing.
Thanks, Cassandra. Just while you're talking about that, I had a question about the alarm inside the carriage. Where are they located? Just wondering.
So they're located in the accessible spaces. Sorry, Duke, I just saw your asking me to speak up. They're located in the accessible spaces. So they're a little illuminated button, and then depends on the carriage. On our older style carriages, they're in the hallway.
Excellent. Thanks, Cassandra, for that. Josh, do you mind? So you use V-Line quite often, and of course, as Cassandra said, depending on the carriage, you might have the disabled seats in different areas and the buttons. Can you just talk about? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a follow-up question there, Cassandra, because I live in Camperdown, so I guess those trains are not the velocity ones, they're the older style ones. And I believe times I've gone in the morning that the stations aren't manned. And like when I rock up there, sometimes it may or may not have an accessible carriage. And, it's fantastic that you provide alternative transport. So I think that's a great initiative. I was just wondering though, sometimes when I'm there, because an accessible taxi is like an hour away each way from Camperdown, is there a way where I can ring ahead to book that service where I'd have to wait at the station for an hour, and then actual time if I leave home is like an extra hour, and then the trip's like 4 hours to Melbourne?
Yeah, so that's definitely something that you can do, Josh. So ahead of time, if you know that you're going to be traveling, say on Wednesday, you can book your travel online, and there's a little checkbox on our online system that says accessibility requirements. So if you tick on that, it will populate a feedback to our customer relations officers, and they check your service a day out to see if it's going to have an accessible carriage or not.
Yep.
And then if it's not going to be accessible for you on the day, they'll pre-arrange your alternative transport.
Awesome, fantastic. And that's through, the PTV app, or?
It's through the V-Line website. So specifically the V-Line website allows you to book, or you can call the 1-800 number if you'd like someone to book it for you.
Yeah, no, fantastic. Because I guess I've had a couple of experiences where it's been our lap, so I'm really happy to hear that, and we'll definitely make use of that. So that's
it's a good feature to use.
Yeah, fantastic. I wasn't sure where, because she's, I guess what Cassandra spoke to there is, a lot of where I grew up in Camperdown, I've had a couple of those issues come up, and so I'm really happy to see that you put other processes into place to help resolve that. Yeah,
and then hopefully eventually you'll have velocities and it won't matter too much.
I've been hearing that for 10 years, Cassandra. So
I know.
I won't say anymore, but just for the ones out there, I'm sure they're going to touch on later on, but you have the travel access card, which is fantastic, where you get free travel for an individual in a wheelchair. And just wondering, Cassandra, because with that V-Line train, they only have one accessible carriage and there's 2 spots. And so if the guy's in a power chair, it's also used for luggage a lot of the time. I was wondering if there's going to be room to actually maybe expand the C carriage as well.
So at the moment, there's no plans in place to expand that. I do understand there's an issue around other customers using it for luggage, and that's something that we're currently in talks with about how we manage that.
Yeah.
So currently there are no plans for that, but someone in a powered chair, I guess probably not in this setting, but in a setting where someone does still have some mobility, they are able to put, say, an a scooter or something in the luggage van versus using.
Yeah. But, you know, they still have to get that off the train and then into the other spot. And then, you know, it's the whole point, you don't want to put the train 15 minutes behind. And, you know, people with disabilities makes you feel awkward to have to take that off and put the whole train behind.
Yeah.
That happened in one instance when there's been 2 wheelchairs and then 1 access spot. And, you know, I've had to make them wait, or I had to wait that hour for the taxi to arrive in Camperdown. So, but it's just some feedback from my end. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we can take that on board.
Awesome. Lovely. Thank you for that.
So just in case people are wondering what a velocity train is, am I right in saying the one we're looking at now is
that's
a
a
velocity train?
Mm.
And got some photos. So this is
The classic feat, they call it.
Yeah,
Is it?
classic fleet. Yeah.
Okay, so you've been on one of these too, Josh?
Yeah. And it's just
And is this the one you really can't get onto, or you're in with all the luggage?
yeah, in the with the luggage. And just some more feedback, Cassandra, I'm wondering, because with the ramp, it's quite steep. And I've heard back from the staff, they're not allowed to physically actually push us up the ramp. So from an OH&S point of view, so it's actually quite precarious, even for myself that's relatively able to get up the ramp and pull myself up. And the staff are absolutely fantastic. I can't fault them. I understand that it's the infrastructure that these guys have, but that's just one aspect also that makes it a little bit hard.
Yeah, so that's definitely something we're currently looking into, is the gradient of the ramps and what we can do as a solution to those gradients. We definitely understand that at the moment they're a really big challenge on our network. And we have a lot of heritage stations that were built a long time ago for fleet that we just are not using anymore. So we can definitely we're definitely looking at what's going to work best to aid us in making those platforms either higher, or whether we add something to those platforms and use ramps, whatever's going to work.
Sandra, can I ask you about this photo here? Now, this was sent through. So is this an area where people with disabilities are told to wait if they need assistance or something?
Yeah, correct. So that's a boarding assistance zone. So they're on every single station platform, and they're a little white square that we ask people that you're not obliged to be in there, but we do say it's the best chance of being seen. So if you do need assistance, conductors are trained to look at those areas on the platform and see that there is someone there waiting.
Thanks, Cassandra. And I think these 2 photos are of the new velocity trains, I'm guessing. So a lot of people wouldn't expect to see a toilet on a train, but there is an accessible one, which is really good. And you can see the designated areas for wheelchairs as well in the carriage.
Yes, so we have accessible toilets on all our trains.
And I'll just attest, Naz, those velocity trains are fantastically accessible. Like
they are
pretty much, I think it's 1 toilet per 2 carriages, which you can access, and plenty of room. So for the velocities, it's really hard to fault, I find anyway.
Excellent. Thanks, Cassandra. Josh. Just wondering, Ray, did you want to comment on any of this so far?
Oh, thanks, Naz. I don't have any personal experience on the V-line trains. However, I did notice that on those older, what you called classic trains, there were only, did somebody mention there were only 2 wheelchair spaces on the entire train?
Correct.
And we know from the disability standards for accessible public transport that contravenes the law.
I think
they are required to have
for it.
It's actually, so because of the timeline of when those fleet were made, they are exempt from that rule.
Can you? So I don't want to be argumentative, but there's no exemption.
So it was anything that was built after 2002, I believe, had to be accessible to those standards. But these fleet were built in like the 50s. So
Yes.
we're trying to catch up with that, and that's definitely something we're looking towards, which is why that one carriage was built to then have 2 accessible spaces in it.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll move on, but yeah, you know, I think there are some areas that can be improved, you know, especially. But it's good that to see that improvements are being done. You know, never quick enough for some people, but hopefully we'll see everything up to date in a short amount of time. So I just wanted to introduce Sara now from Travelers Aid. Thanks for joining us, Sara.
Thanks, Naz.
So a lot of people wouldn't know that Travelers Aid does exist. So it'll be great to hear about the great work that you guys do. And
Thanks.
I think you've got a presentation to share with us.
You can share yours, Naz. That's fine.
Sure.
If you would have, pop yours up, but that's pretty comprehensive.
Okay.
So Travelers Aid, whilst Naz is getting that up, we've been around since 1916. Our services originally started exclusively for women, and that were travelling into Metro Melbourne after the war, and obviously the implications that came with. And over the years, over that 105 years, you know, our services have changed a little bit, but ultimately our goal is to connect people to people and people to place. And our focus now is really around providing assistance to people with mobility challenges, and that might be through permanent or temporary disability, age-related mobility challenges. Also, we're certainly seeing a lot of people, particularly post-COVID, with sensory anxiety related disabilities, or even just, you know, you haven't travelled into the city for a year, and you know, and what's changed and what's different about coming into the city. So we provide services and support around and for that group of service users. Our connection assistance services are the ones that make up the bulk of what we do. So we've got a buggy at Southern Cross Station and Seymour stations, which can physically assist people to move around the stations. We can also provide wheelchair assistance and personal guidance. So personal guidance can just be walking with someone. So again, if you're coming in, for example, from a V-line train, you might be coming in on platform 15, 16, and you may just need some assistance getting from there to your continuing journey, which might be a tram or a bus, but you're not quite sure where to go or how to navigate that. At Southern Cross, we can provide that service, and similarly at Seymour, which is a bit of a tricky station to negotiate because it's quite long ramps. We're also located at Flinders Street Station, and at both Southern Cross and Flinders Street, we can provide personal care. So we've got with adult change tables and hoists. The staff at both of those sites are personal care assistants. So if you're travelling into the city and you need some assistance, either in the bath, it might be with a meal or communication, then we can provide assistance. All of those services that I've mentioned so far are free, and they don't sit within NDIS funding or aged care funding as far as the service user is concerned. So you don't need an assessment. You can just come in and use those services. In particular, the personal care I like to highlight, because I know often when we start talking about having carers or personal care assistants, you know, it does, NDIS comes into it, and plans and assessments. So we sit outside all of that. So it's really very much a spontaneous need, and you can come in and access those services. If it's something you think you're going to use regularly, we do like to set up a brief care plan, particularly if we're using things like the hoist, just so that all staff are across the assistance that you require in the way that you would want that to be provided. We also have a connection assistance, a companion service program. This is currently staffed by volunteers, and the volunteer will meet you at a public transport location. So let's say Southern Cross, for example, and accompany you to an appointment, whether that's a medical appointment or a social engagement. And often that might just be because you may not have travelled that journey before and you're not sure which form of public transport to take, or if it's, if you're travelling with a group of people and you just need some additional assistance, the volunteer can wait whilst you're at that appointment if it's of reasonable amount of time and travel back with you. Ultimately, we like to say our aim is to make ourselves redundant. So, if it's a journey that you're going to take regularly, we might do that journey a couple of times until you feel confident to do it on your own. And let me see, what are your other questions there? So we're located at Southern Cross and Flinders Street are our Metro Melbourne locations, and we've got the site in Seymour as well. The companion service program can meet you at a public transport hub. So that's very flexible. We just ask that service is booked so we can arrange a volunteer, and you can book both the companion service and the buggy at Southern Cross on our website. As I say, anyone can use the services. They are predominantly free of charge. We do have some fee for service services at our sites. For example, if you go into our site at Southern Cross Station, you can have a shower, and that has a small cost to it. You can also store your luggage at Flinders Street, and that has a small cost to it as well. But otherwise, the services are free. And as far as making an appointment, we do like, if you're going to use the buggy service, if you can book it in advance, that's great, but it's not essential. And companion service, if you can book, that's ideal, because we do organise a volunteer and they're not always available at short notice.
Thanks, Sara. Someone just asked, I'm not sure if you can answer this, what happens if you need to get from a train station to a bus or tram?
So if we know in advance and we can organise a companion to provide that assistance, then absolutely we can provide that. If it is a spontaneous, it may not be. If it's within Southern Cross Station or Seymour, then absolutely the staff are there and able to assist with that. If it's out on the network and it is that sort of last minute, then you would be obviously then going to Metro or V-Line relevant customer service. But yeah, you're right, that is definitely a gap in being able to provide that as a spontaneous service.
Excellent. Thanks, Sara. I know there's a couple of people that actually use your services. I'm not sure if Peter or Jack want to add to anything you just said.
Yeah, I've been to the drop-in centre there at Flinders Street a few times when I travel into Travellers Aid independently. I'm a C4-5 quad, so I really like the assistance they can provide and just be spontaneous with, if I'm late night footy or whatever that might be. It's a good drop-in centre and somewhere safe to go and get a bit of assistance. Yeah, so that's a great service. Yeah.
Thanks, Peter. So want to speak to Ray now from All Aboard.
Hang on, Naz, I think Jack wants to say something.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Jack. Sorry.
I'll just back up what Pete said there. That's a great confidence booster to know that they're at the other end when you get off the train, and it just makes you feel pretty comfortable having to go at it on your own, knowing that they're there.
Yeah, it gives you confidence, and if you do get stuck, you know that you can go somewhere that can get you out of trouble.
Yeah.
I'll just say thank you, Jack. That's a great recommendation. Just on that, just the hours. So Southern Cross, we're open from 6:30 until 8, and Flinders Street 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. The hours are a little bit shorter at the moment because of COVID, but do check our website. It's regularly updated.
When the footy's back on, Sarah, will they up their hours? I mean, like MCG footy in the city.
Yeah, look, we are looking at that at the moment. There's still, it's early days to see how many people are going and what the need for services are. So fingers crossed we can increase those hours, but definitely something we'd like to be able to get back to where we were pre-COVID.
Excellent. Thanks very much. Ray, over to you. Did you have a presentation that you wanted to put up?
Oh, thanks, Naz. No, I don't have a presentation. So if you've got that,
yeah, I'll share that
slide just to stick up, just to let people know.
Yep.
See the All Aboard logo, and perhaps figure out how to get to the website so they can see it for themselves. Let's see. There it. Oh, it doesn't say the website, but the website is all-aboard.net.au. Probably, I don't know whether I can do that, but while I'm talking, I don't know if I'm smart enough to talk and
well, actually, when I Googled it, all I had to type was All Aboard, and I got a result. Cool.
Now, All Aboard, as the slide says there, is a network of people, people like us, community organisations, representatives from local government, and the transport operators and providers. So we get people from PTV, from time to time from V-Line, from Yarra Trams, from Metro Trains, the taxi, now called the Commercial Passenger Vehicles Victoria, to come along to our meetings and just when there's some sort of a hot issue that needs to be discussed. So we meet every second month now. Meetings go for about 2 hours, and I know Matt, who you'll hear from a little bit later on, had mentioned that when he sees our minutes, sometimes it says that taxis were not discussed in this particular meeting, and the reason for that is that it's like a talk fest. There are so many issues on public transport that we just go chat, and exchange ideas and tell each other what we've been up to, what we've been advocating on, what submissions we've done and what we wrote and all of that sort of stuff. The hot button issue right at the moment is the disability standards for disability standards for accessible public transport, which is what I mentioned just a little while ago. Is being modernised currently. There's like a committee in Canberra that's been convened by the Federal Department of Transport, and so they're changing some of the standards, modernising them, bringing them up to deal with new technology and that sort of stuff. So there's a lot in that, and people are writing submissions, sending that to the government. So there's a lot of stuff going on. So that's probably all I want to say off the top of my head. So if anybody's got any questions, I'd be quite happy to talk about them.
It'll be great, Ray, if you, because the next slides on most of the transport that people know in Melbourne that they use trams, trains and buses. If you want to speak to some of the features, I guess, of trams and super stops.
Should we start at trains? So,
well, let's start on trams because that's what I've got on at the moment.
No problem. Oh, okay. Sorry, because I've got a bunch of cheat sheets notes.
Oh, yeah, okay. So yeah,
covering your picture on my screen.
So what we're looking at the moment is a tram at a super stop.
Oh, okay, cool. So let me flick to your screen. Okay, so what we're looking at there is what they call C1 tram, if I remember right. But anyway, it's a low floor tram. That's the main thing. And approximately, I looked up these statistics earlier on, approximately 38% of Melbourne's tram fleet are low floor trams, like this one and some other ones that kind of look a bit like it. So which means that 100 minus 38 equals 62% are still the old style high floor trams, which I'm guessing most people tuned in here, like me, are using a wheelchair. So we can't use those trams. Tram stops. So which you're looking at there, platform tram stop. Yes, you are. They're about 20-something%. Let me get my cheat sheet notes back again. 27% of tram stops are platforms. So the only time somebody in a wheelchair can get on a tram, unless you're Superman, like Naz, you've got to have both a low floor tram and a platform tram stop in the same place, else you're just not going to get on. So if you figure out that only 38% of trams are low floor and only 27% of tram stops are the platform type, there's a whole lot less of that. Somebody did some calculations one day, and the percentage was less than 10% of all possible journeys, you know, from point A to point B that you could figure out on the tram network are actually accessible by wheelchair. You might be able to get off at one end, but on at one end, but not off at the other.
So I know, Ray, they're putting in more and more super stops as they go, but yeah, unfortunately they're not everywhere. But the good thing is, especially if you're in the city, you know, there's lots of super stops and you can get on and off a tram. You don't have to go up a ramp or anything like that, straight on, straight off. I mean, that's great for wheelchairs, but also, you know, mothers with trams and all that sort of stuff as well. So my experience with trams when I have got on and off, of course, at a super stop, has been pretty good, you know, but hopefully we'll see more access stops where people can use it more frequently. Next photo is off a train.
Naz,
So
can I just interrupt? I can see a question. Somebody's asked, what options do we have if a tram or a platform is inaccessible?
Okay.
And unfortunately, there's no good answer to that. If all of the trams on the tram line that are close to you are the high floor type, you're gonna get a bus or a train or a taxi. There's just no way around that yet.
I think what doing your homework when you're like, I know on my tram line that I checked it out on the internet prior to that and just seen where the accessible stops were and how often the trams were coming by. So it's worth just doing that bit of homework to see how accessible your line is and what trams are coming, because you don't want to get caught out.
Yeah, and there's a phone app for it's called Tram Tracker that will give you all of that information, which lines, which platform stops are, which tram stops are platforms and which ones are not, and which trams are the low floor and which ones are not. All of that sort of stuff. It's all live information, so it's pretty good.
Oh, that's great to know about. And these links too, what we'll do at the end, and we'll email some of these websites and other information around to everyone. So yeah, that's good info. With trains, Ray. Yep. So trains, not sure. Yeah, I think trains are a lot better than trams, only because, you know, there's ramps to get on and off. But can you just talk about the process? So when someone is wanting to catch a train, you can't just wait anywhere, can you?
You can't. You've got to wait where you've got to predict where the front of the train is. And in most circumstances, that's pretty easy. It's way down the end of the platform. Well, just as a matter of interest, the photo we're looking at here is the brand new train that you'll start seeing coming out on the Dandenong Pakenham, I think, lines. The ones that will been made to go through the brand new underground tunnels that they're digging under the city right now. And so this will be, well, it's probably not really, but it's supposed to be the very front door of the train. So you wait on the platform. Sometimes there's a picture of a wheelchair on the platform and sometimes there's not. But that's where you've got to wait, because that's the only place where the driver will come along and put a ramp down for you if the platform is not completely level with the train. On some of the new train platforms, the platform and the train door are pretty level and you can just roll straight in. But don't make the mistake of going into any other door just because you can, because when you're at the stop where you want to get off, you might be stuck on the train because that might not be level.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that. Just wondering, we've got Jacinta, sorry, can I bring you in just to talk about metro transport as well?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, that's all right.
Sorry, we missed bring you in about the trams, but did you have anything that we missed about the trams? Or
Yeah, so we the government has just announced that they're going to build another 100 of the next generation trams, which are the brand new ones. So we'll see those slowly come out onto the network, and we're consistently upgrading those platform or those ground level stops to platform stops where we can. So it's just a bit of a waiting game, I guess, at the moment. And in terms of the metro stations as well, so you'll see some of those newer trains start to roll out on the network in the coming months and year. So they're all sort of nearly done. Yeah.
Thanks, Jacinta. And just want to say my experience on train travel has been really good. As long as you know what the process is, if you're waiting at the back of the line and you didn't know that you had to wait in the front, you're going to have to wait for the next train because that you're not going to get on that train. But once you know you have to be at the front carriage, the driver would usually see you and automatically the driver would come out, Jacinta.
Yeah. So on the different operators' websites, they'll have accessibility sections, and they'll tell you, where you should be boarding a particular service. So yeah, you do need to go down the end of the platform for metro, and then the drivers will get out and put the ramp out for you.
And they're really good, every time, they've put out the ramp, and also they ask you, where are you intending to get off and all that sort of stuff to make sure that he comes out with the ramp and, you're not stuck on the train. So, yeah, very positive experience from me on train travel.
I have one of those call buttons, Naz, on the front carriage. So if it doesn't work out, you can actually just call the driver. Yeah.
Okay. Just to
Some
make
trains
sure.
have that.
And we've got buses over here. So can you tell us a little bit about the buses, Jacinta?
Yeah, sure. So most of the buses on the network have the ability to be lowered and then a ramp put out so you can board them. So whenever we install a new bus stop now, everything is completely accessible. So we no longer build, bus stops that, you can't use. All of them have to be compliant now. Yeah, so the driver will assist you with getting on, and then you can let them know where you want to get off or press the button, the wheelchair zone.
Excellent. Thanks, Jacinta.
Jacinta, can I just check that?
Oh, thank you, Catherine.
Jacinta, can I just check that? So with the buses, the driver will assist you to get on the bus. It's policy.
So they put the ramp out, and as far as I'm aware, they assist.
Okay.
I can jump in with that one there. It varies from bus driver to bus driver. The minimum they will do is the minimum they're required to do is put the ramp down. But there's also issues with lifting the fold-up seats into the allocated space. They're often, if somebody in a wheelchair is left to their own devices trying to lift up the fold-up seats so that they can get themselves into the right position in the bus. Some bus drivers will assist in that, and some will not. Some will be jumping into the driver's seat and taking off while you're still trying to get the seats organised. And quite often, some other member of the random member of the public will come along and help you out. And then you grab a hold of the grab rail and hold on for dear life.
Well, it's apparently we have an issue in Australia where we don't. It's not a requirement that wheelchairs are tied down in buses in Australia, but I think there's some work being done to make that a reality, where there are tie downs for wheelchairs on buses. If you catch a bus in New York, they will tie you down. In most countries in the world, I think they tie you down. But as Ray said, yes, you have to hold on to the rail, unfortunately, in Australia.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Matt, for that, Jacinta, Ray. We'll move on. I know a lot of people want to start listening to private transport, like returning to driving. But before we do that, I want to bring Matt on board just to talk about the taxi program.
Well, it's a bit. Sorry, I've just had someone come into my house to change an air mattress. But yeah, let me just introduce myself. My name is Matt Lennox. I'm a C5 quadriplegic for 19 years. And I worked in, I've worked from around 2008 until about four years ago in the Victorian Taxi Directorate, and then the Taxi Industry Inquiry, and then the Taxi Services Commission. But I then left that job to go and live in Mexico for 1.5 years, and so I've just recently returned. So I've been out of the industry for quite some time. So I come to you as a private citizen. I don't speak for the government, but my history is that I worked in taxi regulation, basically. Up until 2016, which is about the time that Uber came in, which has caused all sorts of issues. And Naz, I believe you'd like to go into some of those issues that have been caused by Uber. But if you want to have a basic rundown on what the wheelchair, the multi-purpose taxi program, also known as the half price wheelchair program, does. It gives people with a permanent disability a 50% discount on taxi trips. There's also a special category, which is of interest to people who use wheelchairs and scooters, is that they also have another incentive, apart from the half price thing. They have an incentive where the driver is paid currently $25 extra to actually lift, to actually perform the task of lifting, not lifting, but actually going through the motions of lowering the elevator or the ramp, and then tying down the passenger, etc., and then getting them safely out at the end of their journey, and that fee is paid by the government as an incentive to get people to encourage drivers to pick up passengers. It's also in recognition of the fact that wheelchair accessible vehicles are generally considered to be less profitable than non-wheelchair accessible taxis. So that $25 lifting fee is designed to help keep them on the road. So it's in there and make it in their interest to do wheelchair work.
Matt, sorry, I had a question.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to use a taxi, you don't have to get a van, can you? I mean, you can call a wagon or a sedan too and still use your card.
You can still use your card, and if you use your card, there was a strange regulation. I shouldn't go into strange regulations because there have always been a lot of strange regulations in taxis until it's become almost utterly deregulated now, which has caused us some issues. But yeah, there was a half of the lifting fee was paid to the driver in country areas, but not in metropolitan areas. But if you want to call a conventional taxi And as long as they can fit your wheelchair in it, they say as long as the wheelchair can be safely and conveniently stowed, then they are obliged to carry you. Yes. So if you're able to transfer into a regular taxi, yes, you can do that. And I'm sure a number of us have had to do that at certain times when a wheelchair accessible taxi has simply been unavailable. If you've been in a country area, or if you've just been in a desperate spot, because as you know, the history of taxis has been pretty wheelchair accessible taxis has been pretty dismal. That's unfair to say, because the fact that we actually have wheelchair accessible taxis is a great thing, and the wheelchair the multi-purpose taxi program started in 1983 when they brought out the first 2 wheelchair accessible vehicles. So we're now up to about 800. So despite the issues, there are 800 wheelchair accessible vehicles in Victoria. But yes, you can catch a conventional if you wish.
Thanks, Matt. I got a question. Someone said in Geelong they book a taxi and doesn't turn up. When a taxi doesn't turn up, what can you do in that situation, or is there anything you can do in that situation other than call again?
Yeah, it's difficult because no, there's nothing you can do. You can just continue to call again, unfortunately. And there's been lots of test cases about who's responsible for whether anyone's obliged to pick up a wheelchair passenger in a wheelchair accessible vehicle. It's gone as far as the High Court, but no, you can just call again. So in July, and unfortunately, since Uber came along, it basically destroyed the taxi industry. Like, there's no other way of putting it. Everyone can understand that. So since Uber came along, it destroyed the taxi industry, and so the taxi industry was completely deregulated. So now the obligations of people to actually pick up passengers has become very, very it's basically completely deregulated. It's very hard to enforce anything like that these days for the regulator, I would imagine. But they are known. The commercial passenger vehicles Victoria are known for having a very good complaint system. But your question about what can we do about it at the end of the day is we basically need to have more taxis, and it needs to be better run. So that it needs to be fixed. The taxi service at the moment, because it's in a bad situation because of Uber. Matt,
can I just jump in for a second? The way I get around that is I use taxis a lot. Is whenever I use a taxi and the driver is good, I ask for his phone number and if I can call him when I need a cab. So I actually got sort of a good list of taxi drivers that I keep on my phone, and I go through that list rather than call the taxi director, because that way I get more reliable service. Yeah,
well, that's exactly right, Peter. And that's how it was when I got out of Talbot. When I got out of Talbot in 2002, there would have been I think 232 wheelchair taxis on the road. And the recommendation was you basically find a taxi driver you like. The problem is if you're in a country area and there's only one taxi, if you basically become beholden to that taxi driver. That's the problem. So you could end up having to wait 2 hours because the idea years ago is that we all should have access to a booking network, the same as everyone else does, and that Ray talked about the disability standards for accessible public transport earlier, and when they were released in 2002, the goal was that it said that wheelchair accessible taxis must have the same response time as conventional taxis. And by the year 2007, and we're still at a situation where it's like 7 minutes. We got to a situation where it was average of 7 minutes for a conventional taxi, and 32 minutes for a normal one if you went through the booking network. So there was still still work needed to be done, and that was back in 2016. You're absolutely right, Peter. Once I got back from Mexico, I found that the system had degraded so much, and the booking networks, i.e. black cabs and silver, 1-3 cabs and Silvertop, given their struggles, have not been helped, or have not helped themselves to actually improve their service. So I've also gone back to that when I worked for the Taxi Services Commission and the Victorian Taxi Directorate. I never used a private driver, because I didn't want to have any conflict of interest, for one reason, and I also wanted to see how things were going. But once I get back from Mexico, things were in such a parlous state that I've actually also reverted to sticking with a good driver, someone who knows what they're doing. And they generally run secondary networks. So you can sometimes find a guy that will actually run a secondary network. So the 1-3 cabs and Silvertop sort of network is sort of bypassed, and you will have one person that will run a group of about 10 drivers, and you give that person the job, and they will say, if they can't do it, they'll give it to another quality driver in their group. And they pride themselves on being good drivers, and they normally have contracts as well with regular schools and institutions where they have regular jobs.
Yeah. No, thanks,
but
Matt.
That is the best way to go.
Yeah, hopefully that didn't scare many people out there from using taxis. Overall, taxis are still good, but of course, some people have issues, and it's not the best system in the world, but it does still work well.
Sure. On the positive side, the safety has increased like you wouldn't believe. In the old days, they would try to tie you down with one strap. These days, it's always 4 straps. If you catch any taxi, there are 800 taxis out in Victoria at the moment, wheelchair accessible taxis. Whereas when I started back in 2008, there were only 232. Yeah. So things have improved, and response times are not 3 hours like they used to be. So for anyone out there, they should get a multi-purpose taxi card straight away. And that also helps you get, once you've got that number helps you get the scooter wheelchair travel pass as well, which helps you get free transport on all those other modes of transport. Once you've got that, you just need to put that number in, and you can apply for that card. But yeah, work needs to be done in the area. But thankfully, we do have 800 taxis out there that are working hard for a living. Yeah. At the moment, they are working hard and they need work. And I encourage anyone to use the taxi service if they can, and grab a good driver if you can. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
At the moment.
We're going to talk a little bit. We touched on Uber, but we'll come back to it. Just want to move on a little bit. So now we're going to just talk about return to driving. So it'll be great if I can hear from Peter, Jack, and Anthony. Peter, did you want to just, as we're talking to, I'm going to scroll through some of the photos, and they're pretty self-explanatory. If anyone's got any questions, they can ask. But did you want to kick things off, Peter?
Yeah, returning to driving. It's I don't drive myself, but I've helped and assist a lot of people to finding the correct information that they need. But basically, it's going through an OT, and depending on your funding body, getting them to help you with that and select an OT and
Dr. Tony Sellers.
The type of apparatuses that you need to assist you to drive, and there's many types of loaders. There's lots of ways of controlling the accelerator and brake and steering, and especially the electronic ways have really stepped up in the last 5 or 6 years, as in the mechanical push and pull steering type things or accelerator and brakes, but now that's all gone, a lot of electronic stuff. Here's some Wi-Fi type acceleration and controls and systems, but below pictures a ring for braking and accelerating. So there's all different types of really handy assistive type stuff now. So explore it because it's a bit different for everybody. how they like it and what suits them. But there's lots of different options.
Now, Anthony, you're in the process of returning to driving, same as Jack. Jack, it'd be great to hear from you guys on what process you had to follow in returning to driving, you know, because you can't just buy a car, get it modified and get on the road, can you? I mean, you have to go through particular steps to make sure you're okay to drive and you've got the right modifications.
Yeah, like the process I had to go through was I first sourced out a driving OT. You can get them through rehab. I just know one of the guys at one of the places that do the modification. So I just contacted him to ask if he knew of any good driving OTs, which he gave me a list. Tried a few of those and then have got myself onto a good one. Through her, I then, because my license had expired, so I had to go to Vic Roads, get a temporary license, renewal of my license. And then it's been organising a driving instructor to come out, which I've sort of done one lesson, but being 6'4", trying to find vehicles with the options that I need to get back driving. So he's just having a van finish off being modified, which I'll then get into the van and do some more driving lessons with that. So yeah, it's firstly just doing a lot of lessons, working out what hand controls you need, whether you need a ramp, a hoist. I'm modifying. I'm wanting to do a lot of touring and four-wheel driving. So I've actually got a Toyota Hilux that I'm getting the hand controls added onto. But like a lot of the ramps and hoists you see there, I'm getting another one where you actually open the driver's or the passenger door and it hooks onto the front hinges and has a small sling, almost like the hoist that they use in rehab, which that then will lift me up into the driver's seat so that I can still get out for driving and touring. So, and with NDIS, it's a lot of the fun process of a lot of paperwork, asking a lot of questions, NDIS wanting to know the age of the car, why you can't modify another car. A lot of a few of the OTs that I spoke to said, oh, you'd be better off getting a van. And I sort of virtually put my foot down and said, well, for what I want to do, a van's not going to be suitable. So just a bit of toing and froing with NDIS to be able to get it done. But yeah, like with the OT does a lot of work on helping you sort of get the vehicle that you want and need modified to be the safest on the road and still be able to fulfill the goal that you're wanting to achieve at the end.
Oh, great. What about you, Jack? I mean, getting onto an OT, so it looks like the first step to return to driving is getting onto a driving OT or getting a driving assessment done. How did you go around finding an OT? Like, is there a website or did you find the details through the Royal Talbot Austin or a different organisation? Because this is something, if they wanted to return back to drive, they might not know what the first steps are.
Yep. Well, my first steps were, while I was still at the Talbot, was actually deciding that I wanted to drive again. So I set that as one of my main goals with the TAC, just to start the process, and then go about the process of figuring out what you can and can't, or what is possible through. I used peers. I used asking anyone, OTs, what is possible and what's available. So we set about, while I was still in the Talbot and my arms weren't very good, I just had the nerve and tendon transfers to try and get a bit of hand movement, but I didn't know what I was going to get, but I knew I wanted to drive. So we set about the process through an OT of getting me a vehicle that I could be driven around in and I ended up with a Volkswagen multivan with a side ramp and a drop floor that was partly done to be able to drive, so that the seats had moved from side to side. And after a couple of years of actually having that vehicle, my hands were good enough to see where I could go with hand controls. So got under an OT, Tom Ely, to set up and design a hand control system that worked, and then start the process of going through a Vic Roads assessment to actually get my licence back.
Thanks, Jack. And question on when Anthony decided to get a sedan or wagon and transfer into it and, you know, put his chair away, and you decided to go for a van. Just wondering how you came to that decision.
I come to the decision of a van by watching other quadriplegics and picking other out of the peers and that turned up at the Talbot of a similar level to me, and see what they could and couldn't do. And I watched a few of them transfer into vehicles, and I thought that looks nearly impossible. And at that time, when I was still pretty weak and didn't really know where I was going, it seemed completely impossible. So the idea of wheeling into a van and driving out of my chair sort of seemed like the best option at the time.
Thanks, Jack. And you, Anthony?
I did the same as well. Like, I've been in the chair 17 years and sort of just through necessity now, like, have to get back driving. But I sort of done the same, looked at a lot of other quads the same level as me to sort of see what they can and couldn't do, asked a lot of questions, what hand controls they use. And in that time they've changed an awful lot. Like you see there, one of the other slides, like the Wi-Fi hand control and the rings, or even not even having to use the steering wheel nowadays, having a tri-pin that's hooked up electronically to a different attachment to be able to steer the car that way. I still probably still sort of being reasonably young, or like to think I am, sort of still want to feel as normal as possible. So I looked and I thought, well, while I still can transfer in and out using a slide board in and out of the car, or now with the four-wheel drive using the hoist system, getting it done, but probably sort of down the track, I will look at a van, just sort of out of a lot more ease, a lot less taxing on the shoulders, transferring and having to lift your chair in and out a lot. So yeah, that's probably like just the choice I went down at the time.
Great, thanks for that, Anthony. Just want to show people, a lot of people probably know how these things work, but I'll just run through it. The Flowcon hoist over here. So a lot of people who decide to drive a sedan, hatchback or wagon or whatever it is, you know, because shoulder problems are an issue for a lot of us. And just to save that, you know, just to protect our shoulders, there are other options out there. So the Flowcon hoist actually picks up your chair, has to be a fold-up chair, and puts it on the roof, stays it onto the roof. The one beside it, the photo beside it, the Abilator, actually is a hoist system that goes, of course, it's got to be a wagon, but the hoist is actually located in the boot, and an arm comes around to the driver's side and either brings your chair to you or packs it into the back of the boot. So that's a pretty handy contraption for people who want to save their shoulders. Just with vans, a lot of people would know there's a hoist system or there's a ramp system. You can either enter through the back of the van or through the side. And, you know, depending on what is going to suit you is what you go for. The transfer hoist over there, that's so if someone's driving a four-wheel drive, for example, it's quite a distance to transfer up onto. But you can get these things like called a transfer hoist. So you just jump onto it when it's low, and with a press of a button, that actually lifts you or hoists you up to the level of the seat, and you can get going that way. And these pictures here are off a van that you can drive using your wheelchair. So the driver's seat can actually be moved or removed, and you just sit behind in the driver's position in your wheelchair. It locks you down, and yeah, pretty much you're off. The picture on the top right there, that's actually it's a modification that allows people that haven't got really strong arm strength to drive their vehicle without using the steering wheel. So the steering is done using your, in this example here, using your left arm. So pretty much that tripod setup is a steering wheel. And on your right arm is where you use the accelerator and the brake. So it's just trying to show that there's many different modifications that are suitable to people.
Yeah, I had a try at that system probably about 7 or 8 years ago, Naz, and it was just like a joystick, like on my electric wheelchair. That was a 4-way movement, and that was 7 or 8 years ago. And I'm a C4-5 pod, so I was on the borderline of being able to do that. But then that's a great option too for people to stay in their chair to drive with that joystick arrangement. So like you're saying, as the electronic side of this whole driving accessibility stuff has really stepped up a lot in the last few years. So.
Yeah, so there are lots of modifications. You know, if you're thinking about finding a solution to something, most likely the solution is there. It's just a matter of having a look at an example. I mean, if anyone wants to find out more about this sort of stuff or what options there are, they can contact us at AQA.
Because it's sort of better to stick with your specialist OTs that help with driving and assistive stuff, because other OTs may not be sure, or they might seek the answers through the specialist OTs, but it's good to go through those channels.
Yeah, for sure. So this is Susana's car here. So she enters from the back. Got a little video just showing exactly what the setup looks like. So she drives from her chair. As you can see, there's some rails down on the floor, which lock her chair into position. So as you can see, the floor has been cut out in the van just to lower the height of it, and so everything's automated. So the ramp comes out with a press of a button. Do you want to talk a bit about your setup there, Susana?
Yes, I've been driving for about 20 years. Oh no, about 25 years. I was driving a sedan, and then I had problems with my shoulders. So I was offered this Grand Kia, and I can drive from a manual chair if I want to, or from a power chair. And it's all automatic, comes down, and there's never any problems. I steer, there's a little knob to steer there, and there's also a little trigger for my accelerator that goes onto the brake.
Yeah. So standard hand control there that's connected to the accelerator and the brake.
Yeah.
Thanks, Susana. And Peter, you've got Kia as well. So they seem like popular vans.
Yeah, Peter's a bit younger than mine, I think.
I wouldn't look at the brand so much, it's about the options you're looking for. Like the side entry van sometimes allows you to sit more and have more room in the front of the vehicle. Susana's vehicle here is a Kia, and she can drive up through the back of the car and get up to the front. Not many cars do this. Kia is about the only one. So it depends how you want it and where you want to sit in the vehicle. Again, I don't drive, so I go into the back of the vehicle and sit in the middle row, and that was so I could have passengers because I've got a family and I didn't need to sit in the front. Plus, I'm in a large electric wheelchair chair that wouldn't really fit too well right up close anyway. So we just got to sort of iron out what your options are, the different types of vehicles and what suits you.
Thanks, Peter. Got a question here now. If someone wants to return to drive, you know, what options do they have? Are you stuck with a van? Are you stuck with a sedan? Are you stuck with a wagon? How do you make your choice in that? I guess this is a question for anyone out there that wants to answer it.
Some models of cars are more ergonomic, you know, have better seats and the buttons are better and things like that. So you sort of look at those options, but your ATs are really good at this stuff. Now, you've been driving for quite a while and used lots of different cars, and what type of things do you look for when you?
Yeah, well, pretty much like when if someone's going through rehab or, you know, hasn't driven for a while, they do ask. That's one of the questions that they ask, because it's really important. You know, what sort of car do I recommend? And pretty much my answer is, what's your taste like? You know, do you like sedans? Do you like wagons? You know, if you can transfer, whatever your tastes are, you know, if you like your sports car, two-door, whatever, that's what you go for. The only thing you've got to remember is, you know, some cars are more convenient than others. For example, a wagon. I used to drive like a sporty sedan for years. I loved it. It was fantastic. But transporting your sports stuff, like your sports chair, and you just don't have the room. You chuck it in the back seat, and I've done lots of damage. I've ripped the couch and scratched the paintwork, all that sort of stuff, and only because I didn't think, you know, wagons were fashionable. But ever since then, I've been driving a wagon, a few different models of wagons. I love it. It's the best thing I could have done. You know, it's so convenient just to chuck whatever you need into the wagon. And a van would be the same thing. You know, you don't have to worry about folding things up, you know, straight in, straight out. It's really easy and it's really convenient. But, you know, if your tastes are a sports car, that's what you go for. That's what
I done it. Whereas they sort of recommended me, they said, oh, look, you're probably better off selling your cars and getting a van. And I said to them, even still with selling my car, I still don't have the money to outlay buying a brand new van to then get all the modifications done. So that's where I looked at going, right, well, I already own these cars. So stick with them to start off with. And then like myself, wanted to still do four-wheel driving. So that's where I've stuck sort of with the four-wheel drive.
What's your funding background, Anthony? Your funding background?
Mine's NDIS. So the big question from them was they want to know the age of the car, how many kilometres it's done. I had to then take it to a few of the different car modification places so that I could look at what range they had in modifications to suit it. To then, that was then going to be like, okay, well, the four-wheel drive isn't going to be practical. I've just got to stay with my station wagon. So that was sort of part of the process to then decide which car I went with. But a lot of them said, we're doing a lot of four-wheel drives now, like with the different hoists that I'll be using, or some of I think it's got to be a brand new car where they can actually get the driver's seat to rotate out and drop down to your wheelchair height outside of the car. So yeah, there's a lot of toing and froing questions, and that's where the OTs put in the hard yards of, if you get a good one, fighting for their client, saying, well, this is part of his mental release, his goals and his aims. He wants to do touring or four-wheel driving, or they live on a farm, so he needs a four-wheel drive where one of these low-floor vans aren't going to be practical.
And so NDIS is more about your goals and how you can be inclusive in the community or independent. And so from my understanding is they'll pay for all the modifications when you work that out within the IS, but you pay for the vehicle, where TAC sometimes contribute quite a lot to the vehicle and pay for the modifications.
Sue's made a comment here. She's just saying she's got an online driving assessment in May when her need for modifications will be done. She's not sure how that they will do that. I then have to do an on-road test the following week with the driving instructor, and the AP will be in the car with her. Colin is asking about, his question is a manual wheelchair user, what cars can still be converted? Apparently there's problems with airbags, under the dash airbags. I know that was a case with knee airbags, I think, because that gets in the way of where the hand controls are. And he thinks he has to go for a van because of that. Does anyone know anything about that?
Yeah, with the mechanical of the old push and pull steering, the arm that sticks out beside the steering wheel, that would get in the way of airbags. But now with the electronic side of driving by wire and, without that mechanical push and pull levers controlling the pedals on the vehicle, that's probably changed a lot, Colin, in the sense of the cars you can convert.
I'm going to see if I can bring Colin on, but I know that they can disengage airbags, but it's not as simple as going to the mechanic and taking the wires out. I think you have to get it done through an engineer.
I think a lot of big mods like that. Chatting with Capital, I know some of the they're actually looking at doing some big off-road Iveco vans, and some of it then actually, through all the process of it, it then becomes not known as a Iveco van anymore. It becomes known as a Capital special vehicle because of big modifications like that. But yeah, it's definitely not easy and not cheap to do.
Yeah, it can be done. I'm not sure, depending on what funding you've got. For example, if you've got NDIS, is that a problem? As Peter mentioned, it's all around your goals. And yeah, they might have solutions around that, cost-effective solutions, or cost might not be an issue.
I know with those.
Just wondering if Sal is there.
Yeah, I'm here, Naz. You want to bring Colin on?
Yeah, Colin on, or I'm not sure. Do we want to bring all the others, or if anyone wants to join in face to face, maybe they put their hand up and we can chuck you on.
Oh, you want to bring them face to face?
If they want to, yeah.
Okay, so we're into question time.
Yeah, I think so. Unless anyone's got any further comments or answers to any of the questions.
Yeah, Naz, did you want me to go through some
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jacinta, if you can talk about some of those things, I forgot about that.
Sure.
All right, we'll do that and then we'll bring people on.
Yeah.
Great. I'll just share my screen.
Thanks for that reminder, Jacinta. I got carried away.
So I guess everyone's sort of returning now to the public transport network, and what we're really focused on is making sure that people feel safe, and we have ramped up cleaning across the transport network. So trains and trams are cleaned nightly as well as throughout the day. High touch surfaces are sanitised regularly, and we've installed 300 touchless hand sanitising stations across the network as well to help with that. So some of the different things that we have that you can use, the PTV website. So that has information about, priority seating, concessions, mobility aid specifications, journey planner, so you can get in and see, which stops are accessible and where you can travel. We've got information about priority seating as well, and how to identify those on different vehicles. We do have a number of free travel passes as well. So we've got the Access Travel Pass, the Scooter and Wheelchair Travel Pass. We've got a companion card, an assistance animal pass as well. And if, you know, for whatever reason you might not be eligible for one of those, we have concession fares as well, which is half price. So you might get a disability support pension, or, you know, you're a seniors card holder or something like that. That will entitle you to half price fares. So more information or in-depth information about those passes and concessions on the PTV website, and they'll tell you how to apply for those. We have the PTV app as well, so you can download that onto your phone. So it's fully accessible with a voiceover capability. You can plan your journey, you know, save your journeys as well. You can get push notifications and alerts, and, you know, you can plan your journey on the go. You don't need to be on a computer to do all of that. We have Ride Space as well, which is a new tool that we've got, which is a website. So it lets you see real-time passenger volumes on metropolitan trains, on platforms and at stations across the metro network as well. So, you know, a particular service that you travel on, you know, might be too busy, so you might want to wait for the next service for there to be less people. So you can see how many sort of people are on there, and whether you want to get on there or not. We also run an event each year, except last year, that's called Try Before You Ride. And that is generally at Box Hill, where we get everyone together. So you can come out and try, you know, trains, trams, buses. We've got taxis out there as well. We've got a V-Line coach comes out there too. And I know V-Line runs their own throughout the year in a couple of different locations, just for people to try out regional trains too.
Jacinta, just to touch on that, the one that's happening at Box Hill is no longer occurring. All operators are being told that we need to run our own Try Before You Ride, so that's something we currently do.
Okay.
But Metro Trains, Yarra Trams, and the bus networks will all run their own, and then we'll interchange. So we're looking at running one at Southern Cross eventually, once we can run large-scale events again, which will include Metro, bus, and trams. And then Yarra Trams will run some out of their depots, and Metro Trains will run ones where they can as well.
Fabulous.
Sounds like great having all the options in one place, but now it sounds like it's going to be spread out.
Yeah, maybe. I've gone to a couple of those and I always thought they were quite good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so that we can hit more people. The working group, the disability working group with DOT or the Department of Transport, they want to be able to reach more communities where, because they've had it at Box Hill for so long, people have to travel longer distances. So now you'll be able to have one, say, at Werribee that will have bus, taxi, and metro trains. So people in that area get to see what that's like and move them around the network a bit more.
Right. Okay. So we've already spoken about metro trains, so I won't really go into this in depth, but all metro stations except for Hainton are accessible for customers with mobility aids. There are a couple of stations that have pretty steep ramps, but at those stations we've got wheelchair pushers that the staff can help you with.
So just going back to that, so how do you get the attention if you're going to a train station and you need to get up the ramp? How do you get the attention of like a staff member?
Yeah, so there's buttons on the ramp, assistance buttons.
Oh, excellent.
You can press. So in terms of safety, we've got a couple of things, you know, on the network to help you feel safer. So we have protective services officers that patrol every metro station from 6 p.m. until the last train. We've got authorised officers around the network, transit police, we've got customer service staff, CCTV, emergency assistance buttons, and safety zones. And if you ever feel unsafe, please speak to the driver or conductor, or contact the police as well. And that is me.
Oh, excellent. Thanks for that. And thanks for the reminder, Jacinta. We didn't want to miss out on any of that. Not sure if Sara, we're going to bring.
Yeah, yes, we can start to bring people on. So we're into 5 o'clock. We've finished right on time. So thank you to all our panelists for joining us today. Feel free to stay. We're going to go into overtime and invite some of the people online to join us as panelists, so we can have perhaps a bit more of an open conversation. I think we've answered most of the questions, but I'll just start to make people panelists. If you're an attendee, I'll make you a panelist, and then you can start to chat with us. So I'll start with Nick because he had his hand up for quite a bit of time.
Yeah, thanks, Sal. Just while we're waiting, the MyKey card, Jacinta, I know everyone's got to have a MyKey card, and if you've got if you're a person with a disability, it's free of charge. I think there's just an application form you got to complete. And
Yeah. So it depends on a couple of different things. There's, you need to get a letter from a specialist and that kind of thing, just depending on what particular pass you're after. But there's quite a few that are free to help people get around the network.
With the, I know this because the multi-purpose taxi program area of the Victorian Taxi Directorate actually began processing these. But if you're in a wheelchair or scooter and you already have a multi-purpose taxi program card and you want to apply for the simple scooter wheelchair card, okay, the Access Travel Pass is different, but the basic scooter wheelchair card, you can actually apply, you can get the scooter wheelchair form, and you can simply put your MPTP card number into it and send it off to, the appropriate person. So that actually, because you've already been certified as someone by the Victorian government as someone who uses a wheelchair, it makes it a very sort of streamlined process. So anyone in a scooter wheelchair using a scooter or wheelchair should just go straight for that one because it's the easiest one to get. You don't have to go through the process because you've already done it. Yeah, with the proving through the taxi program.
Thanks, Matt. If anyone's got any questions, just unmute yourself and just speak up. Someone asked a question while we're waiting for other questions. Are electric cars going to be big? Just trying to...
That was going to be what I was going to ask.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Colin?
Yeah, because basically last week I had to go to hospital 84k away, and on the way my gearbox destroyed itself on my Audi A3, and so I had to go by taxi. And so now I'm going to have to start looking at my options for an upgraded car because the car's 15 years old and it's probably had its time. But the concept of electric vans would be, with a flat floor already, would be interesting.
Well, your concept with vans, especially, Colin, would probably be something that is easy and it's got more space to put battery power into. I did see last week that we're releasing a people mover that is electric. They're planning to bring it out last year. Either Mitsubishi or Kia was a full-size people mover coming out next year.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Someone actually asked a question about filling up with gas. Was that you, Colin, as well? Or filling up with petrol? I'm not sure if Susana is still here with us.
Susana left, I think.
She left, yeah. So what I do is myself, when I need to fill up I've got my regular petrol stations that I go to, and they actually, I just drive to a pump that they can see me, and I toot my horn, and they recognise me. So they come out, when they can, and they fill up for me. I did try once to do it myself, but it was such a hassle getting the chair out, transferring onto it, getting the pump and pumping the gas. Took me ages, and I will never do that again. I'd rather wait there for an hour for someone to come and give me a hand. And whenever I'm out in the country, for example, and it's a petrol station where they don't know who I am, and you toot the horn. We've done that a few times, and they wonder who you are, why you're tooting the horn. Come out. And it's actually really easy to Google the petrol station and find them and ring them up. And they've always been fantastic. I just tell them the situation. I say, look, I'm just in a wheelchair. When you got time, come out and fill my tank up. And that's what I do all the time now. And it works really well. So call me lazy if you want, but I'm happy with that tag.
Like you're lazy, Naz.
I admit it, I am, but I'm happy with that.
I do the same. I've cultured a couple of the local petrol stations, and they recognise the car, just roll in and just make myself visible and wave at them, and out they come.
Yeah.
When I've been travelling interstate and had to fill up, I just hoot my horn, and I had one guy in Yass who came storming out, and he says, "You bloody yuppies in your sports cars." "Oh, no, what do you think I am?" And I said, "Well, he said, "What do you think you are, a cripple?" And I said, "Well, actually, yes."
Naz, just a quick call out to everybody. If you can turn your cameras on, we'd like to do a screenshot of the whole gang in gallery view. So there's 28 people online at the moment. I'm not seeing quite all of them. It might be the limits of my
Good idea. I can see there's a gang of people at the Royal Tower, it looks like, as well.
Yeah. So if people can turn on their cameras, we'll just do a quick screenshot, and then we'll go from there.
If anyone's got any questions, please speak up, because we can multitask.
Yeah, there was another good question coming from Colin, and I think it was Colin, and I might Matt to answer this, but it was about someone getting charged the taxi lifting fee without having the card. So as far as I know, they cannot charge you the taxi lifting fee if you don't have a card. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. If you don't have a card and the driver gets nothing, that's just bad luck for them. Theoretically, like wheelchair passengers should not know anything about the lifting fee. Yeah.
I had to pay it.
Yeah, no, you shouldn't. You should have taken the taxi driver's number, because that was blatant theft. That is something that should only be paid by the government without, like in the background, like with the little card, a whole lot of electronic stuff happens in the background. And then it goes directly to that fee goes to the networks, which goes through the operators. But no, absolutely not. Should anyone ever have to pay that fee? No, and if they do, that's discrimination. You'd be able to take them to the Victorian Equal Opportunities and Human Rights Commission, but you wouldn't even need to go that far. But
I'll complain to them and see what they say, because
absolutely.
I use my multi-purpose wheelchair card as a discount. I've travelled a lot further than the normal payment, so
that's fine. If you're in a wheelchair, also I should point out, they have caps on the amount of money you can spend for normal users. When I say normal users, I mean we in the taxi world we differentiate between conventional and wheelchair. So the conventional users, people that don't use wheelchairs, say they might be deaf, blind, any other kind of disability, they use conventional cards. So if they use that card, the driver doesn't get a fee. It's only if someone gets, it's only someone who has a wheelchair card, and that wheelchair card actually is, if you got a wheelchair or a scooter, there's no limit on how much money you can spend on the half price taxi card. So if you're in a wheelchair or a scooter and you have a wheelchair, if you got a wheelchair card, if you got a card that does not say wheelchair scooter, you should go and upgrade it immediately for the sake of your taxi driver and for the sake of the fact that you will be completely unlimited in terms of your subsidy. You won't have a cap of about
I did that years ago.
$7,000 a year.
I did that years ago, and I still, both of them went up to the maximum of $81.20 of subsidy.
Yeah, okay, that's a per trip subsidy. That still exists, but that's different from your annual subsidy.
I had to pay 120 above that.
Yeah, so you do have to. There is always a maximum. So there is that. Although, I mean, I don't want to be tricky, but if someone stops on the way, and starts the meter again, then they can get the subsidy. It's a common thing to do. If you feel like a rest.
Yeah, you need a lunch break or something.
I'm not encouraging anyone to do that. That would be, that would take you to the 7th level of hell.
Any questions from anyone?
There's a question from Newman.
Oh, Newman?
I've got a question. Sorry. Just had to unmute myself. Hello, everyone. My question relates to the technology that you can actually use in cars to make your transfers easier. I've heard of hoist technology, where if you have a van or a ute, you can have some sort of mechanism that you can put in there, and that sort you don't have to basically fold your chair in the chair yourself. Is this option also available for sedans or sports cars? Can that be installed in one of these, or is it popular?
I think so. We showed some photos before, Newman. I'm not sure. Did you get to see the Flowcon hoist and the Abilator? There was some photos we showed up. So if anyone wants to answer that, what I'll do, I'll just show that picture again, just for people to see. So you can see there the Flowcon hoist, which puts the wheelchair on top of the car.
The other version of that is the Waymo.
I'm sorry?
The other version of that is the Waymo.
Waymo, okay. So it works the same way, does it?
I've used that since '81.
Okay. But it works the same way.
Those that are new to it should note that it actually lays the chair down on its
side.
side.
Actually, yeah, sorry, it doesn't stay like that. Thanks for pointing that out, Sal.
The requirement is that the chair needs to be a folding chair, though.
Yeah, it has to be a folding chair, and it actually lays flat on the roof. The abilator beside that only works with a wagon type vehicle, where there's an arm that comes out of the back of the wagon and brings your chair to the driver's door, and vice versa.
Yeah, and that only works with a fixed frame chair.
Not fall up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Because it needs the axle. It needs the axle at the back to grab onto the chair to hoist it.
Yeah. No. Does that answer your question, Newman, or were you thinking about a different solution?
No, I think that answers the question. Just one little thing. I was researching online, and I came across an arm which actually takes your wheelchair straight into the trunk.
Oh, well, that's what I just showed as well. You must not have the screen.
I'm sorry. I think I got disconnected at that time.
Okay, yeah.
But I'm talking about sedans and not SUVs. So I'm not too sure if that's possible, but yeah.
I'm not sure. So that was the one we shared on the screen was called the Abilator, and that wouldn't work with a sedan, because you can't actually fold. You need to fold up the chair if you've got a sedan.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Makes sense.
I think
Thank you.
you had a question.
Just before that, Sal, someone just put up a post saying that their taxi driver caps their trips at $120, and that's a fair enough thing to do. If you are allowed these days, it used to be against the law. You are allowed to negotiate a lower fare. So if you're going that far in a taxi that you're paying $120 plus a $25 lifting fee, that's completely reasonable that you should ask the taxi driver to say, let's stop it at $120, and then he or she gives you the rest of the fee for free, because it's such a good fare. Anyway, so that was just pointed out. So that's my response to that.
Good.
Thanks, Matt.
Naz, can you hear me?
Yep.
Just we've got a question here from Young. She was wondering, her taxi card's coming up to expiry in January, and she was wondering how would she go about renewing that? It's probably a question to Matt.
Yeah, Matt.
Well, automatically a renewal notice should come to her, and she does have to fill out a form. Like, a new card won't come, but it's just it lasts for 6 years, so she's coming up to 6 years. But the renewal process is very quick. And if you're like me and you missed the renewal notice in the mail and you know it's coming up, just you could probably download the form off the internet. But you won't need, it's just a renewal form. You don't have to go through the whole rigmarole of a doctor again. You just have to fill it out and say, yes, I'm still here. It's actually something to asking if you're still alive, really, rather than if you still have a disability, because the program is actually, program only gives the card to people with a permanent disability, so you don't have to go through that process again. So it's a simple renewal form. So find that on the internet, and yeah, you won't have to go to the doctor. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. And also and that's what we're talking about. That's the card. That's what we're talking about.
Thank you, guys.
Oh, good. Any questions? I've got a question if no one's got a question.
I've got a question.
Yep.
The question I have, someone mentioned that you don't need to have a direct link. I had a problem with that, problem with the knee airbag, and I couldn't get a vehicle because of that. But someone was saying that they've now overridden it, so you could have your brake working by wire, not a physical link.
All right.
Did someone say that?
No one said that.
Yes, they did. Peter did.
Yeah, I did. Because of the old push-pull.
Peter did.
Sorry?
Peter Benthem did.
Because of the old push-pull scenarios with the mechanical push and pull steering stuff, not steering, accelerating and brake stuff. Now, if you get away from that, because that's what gets in the way of the airbag and the steering column, so to speak. But if you get into the electronic side of it, the drive-by-wire, then you can have those other airbag functions still attached.
Okay, and that's with the brake as well, Peter.
Yeah,
I'm under the impression that the brake still has to be mechanical. The fly-by-wire stuff only is allowed for the throttle. I think you still have to have a mechanical brake.
Yep, it has to be controlled mechanically, like the brake has to be mechanical, but you don't need to be linked up to it mechanically. Because I've driven vehicles that were straight four-way joystick control. So it wasn't a mechanical rod joined up to it. It was still the mechanical braking that's controlled electronically.
So you don't have the push rod that goes from the steering wheel down to the brake pedal, is what you still got a mechanical system, but it's not a push rod that goes down to the pedal, which would be getting in the way of the airbag, the knee airbag. So I think it's worth investigating.
Is that only a recent thing, Peter?
No, it's an area that people get tripped up in. You're not allowed to adjust the mechanical braking system. You're not allowed to take it away. You have to keep that what's there on the vehicle. You can improve it or make it better or make it more sensitive, but people get confused with that and the actual mechanical part that Sal's just saying, the rod that goes down to the brake. Yeah. So you can actually have a little electronic lever that pushes forward and back as a brake and accelerator. Yeah, that's electronic. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's good to know.
It's very good to know.
Yeah,
They stopped
I
me.
always thought the accelerator, you could have like the Wi-Fi accelerator, but the brake actually had to be like a push rod.
Yeah.
Braking
Now
system.
they've got that one that can be mounted on the door for throttle and brake, but I thought you had to be specially assessed to be able to go to full electronic.
Yeah, and that will be on your license and part of your driving conditions. So it's about your ability and your driving conditions that will be put on your license, just like you wear glasses or something like that. It's generally a requirement now that they put on your license. Yeah.
See, my problem is I've got a wheelchair seat, a car seat that goes electrically forward and back and actually swings out of the car on the driver's side. So I need a 3-door car, and there's so few 3-door cars left around, and those that are around that are young enough to get NDIS approval, they've all got the airbags underneath.
Yeah. So, you know, it's a big conversation to have with the specialist and to see your way around it and what can be done and what can't be done. So, you know, we're not all over completely the technical side of it, but I'm sure there's people doing it. You just got to iron that out, work that out with the engineer and the modifications. Yeah.
So who are these specialists that you can find out all these details from?
It really depends the type of work you want to do. Some of it's here in Melbourne, some of it's in Sydney, but I wouldn't want to name a group right now and miss out on others. So if you want to contact us offline, I'd definitely like to share that. And
okay.
More research into it.
Thanks, Peter.
No problems.
Is there a listing of vehicles that people can find that have all the different options available? Like if I wanted to go and buy a vehicle, is there a listing somewhere where it'll provide me with the capability of any sort of hoisting device? Is there any body that does that?
You're probably better off going into your specialist ATs because they're more all over that type of stuff. No, but no, because that's something that we're not specialty in that area. You'll find OTs that are. So we did have Tom Lee to be planned here today who could have answered those questions, but Tom couldn't make it. So there are specialised OTs that just do driving assistance stuff. Yeah. So I encourage you to get onto those guys, especially for this stuff that's a little bit different, or you know, your high needs or your electronics and the different stuff. Yeah.
I wonder, Peter, like if you've got an idea of a vehicle that you want to get, you know, there's some, like you said, some modification companies. I mean, there's probably 3 that are most commonly used. You know, if you called any one of them, I'm sure they'd be able to tell you if that's a good car to be getting modification wise.
Yeah.
So Peter, can I just ask a quick question? I don't know whether I'm a bit thick or what about this, but are you trying to tell me that you now can get, if you've still got the mechanical, as if your foot was pushing the brake, but now they've got an actuator which is electrically driven to almost push the brake pedal down, but it's not a solid link inside it. It's by wire.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So it can only be done on certain cars, of course, the more later model cars, because you can't upset the mechanical steering that's already there. You know, it has to be something that you can tap into that is able to drive by wire, that they can tap into. So they're not changing the actual foot pedal and foot brake and all those type of things.
To give you an idea, my car, I've got my hand controls there. It's fly-by-wire for the throttle, and I can turn on or turn off the foot pedal. So I can have either the foot pedal on for the throttle or my hand control on, but mine's just still a mechanical linkage to the brake.
Yeah, same as mine. Yeah.
And I've phoned up 2 of the major fitters here in Victoria to find out which cars can be fitted to, and none of them got back to me, of course.
Yeah, that's why I was asking that question, actually.
So did you email them, Colin, or might be worthwhile if you've emailed them to try them on the phone? So
I phone up when I don't get them. I send an email.
okay.
And no response there either. But that was only just last week when my car blew up.
Okay.
So I haven't got much choice but to spend $8,000 on fixing my car when the car's only worth $4,000.
Yeah.
It'd cost $5,000 to get hand controls fitted to any new car.
Still probably the cheapest option, Colin.
Depends, you can get them as low as $2,000, Colin, to get a hand control set up.
I've got a spare hand control in the cupboard, an old MPV, but I'm talking about a decent setup.
Yeah, you can get a brand new set for about $2,000 fitted.
But then I'd also want my seats fitted.
Okay, so yeah, you got the seat that's got to come across as well, yeah.
And my roof, my WOMO roof rack.
Yeah, okay.
It all adds up.
Of course.
And then of course you got to get your indicators swapped across to the right to where you can reach it as well. Yeah, unless you get a Toyota or a Japanese car, or you've got to swap the indicators across to the right side.
Well, there used to be a car called Holden as well, Colin.
What was that?
There used to be a car called Holden as well.
No, they don't believe. Never heard of them.
Yeah, I know, because they don't exist.
Has anybody got any understanding about, as the years go by, our bodies change and our capabilities change? Is there any sort of like, whether it be the TAC or the NDIS, over any policy as far as that is concerned, that it makes you eligible or non-eligible to get another vehicle because you're evolving as a spinal patient?
Well, look, I think there's going to be a point that you're always going to have to prove, you can drive just like any able-bodied person, and usually that gets triggered by age, or sometimes if you have accidents that you just need to prove that you're safe behind the wheel. And I wouldn't put the SCI spin on that. I think that's just a general for all population.
Yeah, I guess every year the Vic Roads requires me, because of my age, to get a medical test done to see whether I'm suitable to hold a license.
So that's your TAC, Duke?
Beg pardon?
Your TAC?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's TAC just asking you to get a doctor to say that you're fit to drive.
No, it's not TAC, it's Vic Roads.
Sorry, you said that.
Really, every year?
Every year.
Wow.
For the last
won't they take your
for the last 10 years.
What's your driving record like, Jim?
Won't they take your word for it?
I only have about 10 accidents a year, so I don't understand why. I haven't had an accident for the last 20 years.
Well,
what age did that come in?
Hey, sorry, can I just interrupt everyone? I just want to thank Sara, Jacinta, Cassandra, and Ray, for joining us. If you guys need to go, you're welcome to hang around, but really appreciate you guys joining us. Really valuable information that you've shared with us. You're welcome to hang around, but if you need to go, I just want to thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, Naz. It's been a pleasure. But yes, I will take the opportunity to bugger off because it's 11:30 p.m. here. It's
11:30 p.m. Well, by the way, everyone, Ray's joining us from the US.
Oh, Tucson, Arizona.
Arizona.
How lucky. Maybe not. I'll also leave unless anyone has any specific questions about taxis.
I've got one, Matt.
All right, no worries. Well, see you later, Ray, if you're going. And I'll see you very soon. I hope to catch up with you and talk. Okay.
That'd be cool. Go on.
All right. Cheers.
I'll keep you to it, Matt. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Beautiful.
Bye, everybody.
Matt, we touched on Uber. Now, Uber's taking the market. You said, the taxi industry has just gone downhill big time.
Yeah.
Now, you can't see Uber going away, and hopefully things won't get worse, but there's a good chance things are going to get worse. Uber's saying they're coming and they're going to have accessible transport and all that sort of stuff. I can't see that happening. How would that even happen?
I don't understand how it could happen. I mean, the whole concept of Uber is you've got a car, your own car, and you're going to go out and make a few extra bucks, which is kind of what taxi drivers used to do. That they'd grab a taxi and make a few extra bucks, but there was controlled by regulation. But no one's going to take a wheelchair accessible vehicle and go take it out and try and make it, convert a vehicle into wheelchair accessible and then go out there and try and make a few bucks. So the problem is that they've changed the multi-purpose taxi program was actually named after a multi-purpose taxi, which was for wheelchairs, but then it was expanded to other people with other disabilities. So the majority of people with disabilities who are on the multi-purpose taxi program don't actually use wheelchairs. So, unfortunately, the issues get confused. And so because about, 100,000 out of, 120,000 members don't use wheelchairs, they want the flexibility to use their half-price taxi card in an Uber.
Which has got the thumbs up.
Where does that leave us? It's gotten the thumbs up, and I can't believe it. It's going through, and they're developing it, and it's something that should be stopped. It's really, really unfortunate, and they might make sounds about but if you've got it, like what kind of wheelchair accessible vehicles are out there? They're all being used by people, and if they're if people aren't using them on a particular day, are they going to let their friend take it out and run it as an Uber? Well, I don't know if the TAC would be particularly comfortable with that. Yeah, like the vehicle being used as to make some cash. So which wheelchair accessible vehicles as Ubers? I don't understand how it could happen. The only reason we got to 800 wheelchair taxis in Victoria instead of 200 20 years ago is because of hardcore regulation and government intervention and cooperation with networks. But unfortunately, because all the regulation has gone away, the government has no control. It's very hard to see what they can do. So I don't know if you recall, Naz, Peter, Josh, that AQA actually signed on to a coalition and right along with Roy before, but there was a coalition of 12 groups, including AQA, that submitted to the government a big submission saying if you're going to legalize Uber, it's going to have massive implications for wheelchair accessible taxis, which led to the government's promise at the time, promising if we legalize Uber, we will we're going to legalize Uber, and so they promised $50 million towards wheelchair accessible taxis per year, and a disability services commission, like a new commissioner focused on disabilities. They spent that money somewhere else. I'm not sure where, and there's not much they can do now because it's been completely deregulated. So it's something that needs to be fixed. It's going to get, but like you said, Naz, it's going to get worse before it gets better. We're going to have to find a way to get it better because it was getting better, and at the moment, I mean, the fact is, it's not. There's market failure, and the government needs to step in to fulfil its obligations under the disability standards for accessible public transport, which means they shouldn't be handing out the like a $50 million fund, like the MPTP. They shouldn't be giving. They shouldn't be giving a company like Uber access to that kind of money when they're not doing anything to supply services to people with wheelchairs and scooters who are the most in need, and why the MPTP was created in the first place.
Has there been a deal made under the table there, Matt? Do you think?
No, I don't think there's a deal made under the table. I think there's a government that was scared, and a government that just said, well, we've got I think possibly inept bureaucrats, but yeah, like it'll be a scared government that and perhaps yeah.
So I've got a question for Jacinta and Cassandra. What do you think are the possibilities of Department of Transport or V-Line actually picking up the wheelchair accessible transport mantle and running a program out of your services, so that those wheelchair accessible taxis could be run out of PTV or at V-Line?
It's an interesting question, Jacinta. You might have more on that. I joke all the time that I'm going to buy a fleet of accessible taxis and run an accessible taxi. Like I'd make bank. There's just not enough of them, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That is a really interesting question, and I suppose I guess it really comes down to what the wider government wants to do in terms of transport, because we had all of these separate agencies a couple of years ago. So separating big roads, separating PTV and all of that, and we've all been brought under the one umbrella of Department of Transport now. And one particular area that was a bit iffy for a while was around commercial passenger vehicles. So it's totally a possibility that commercial passenger vehicles comes under DOT, and we have more oversight of that. And I guess a one-stop shop for everything transport related. So I think it's a possibility. I'm not sure, unknown caller. How
do we,
what the likelihood is.
Sorry.
Can we push this through you, Jacinta, or how do we get that idea up the chain?
Change.org.
We could just have it.
No, seriously though, something needs to be started.
Yeah, something we will do something, and we shall do something. I'm not sure how it will be done, but the idea of the government running a service like that has been balked at before, because the concept of a blue bus has been talked about. We don't want a specialised service. But certainly V-Line, in terms of their transitions to, if maybe V-Line could hold a fleet, for special purposes. It's been done before, where the government's retained taxis and taken them out of the fleet. But it looks like it will have to go that way. And regardless of any concerns about blue bus, there must be these things should be subsidised. They should be available on demand.
I'm not sure if anyone remembers what the blue bus was, but
no, I'm not even sure. It's just an idea that it's You explain, please, Naz.
Look,
yeah.
I'd rather not, because it's not a good thing. Anyone else?
The blue bus.
I'll go if no one else does, but
the blue bus was the buses that were run by what's now called Scope. It used to be the Spastic Society.
Yeah.
So they were branded as blue buses, and the people were called Spastics. So that's where the bus concept comes from.
And it was pretty much like a pick-up, drop-off bus. Just.
And that was in the days before there were accessible taxis. So multi-purpose vehicles or wheelchair accessible vehicles, I still think could be. It's about claiming the meaning and making it a positive meaning.
Yeah, because
That's right. You're
there
right.
were lots of jokes going around about the blue bus.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't need to be that way, Sal. You know that you could have a rolled gold service that recognises the fact that there is a failure.
Yeah.
You know, they could be painted black and look nice and
black and
yellow. And available for people in wheelchairs, you know, like when required, and it shouldn't cost too much money.
There are some of our coach operators that do use a accessible taxi as a backup. So it sits at their depot and they use it as a backup if they have someone that arrives that's in a mobility aid and they.
So hang on, is that a taxi or a vehicle? Because if it's a taxi, it should be out on the road at all times.
Well, it is a taxi that they have on call.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay.
There are a few coach operators out in the regions that do that because not all of their fleet is accessible. There's about 90% of our fleet that's accessible at the moment.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of 10% gap. So
Like
it's something that's ready for you to be.
Yeah, well, there are taxi police. They're called transport service officers. Some of them wanted to be armed back in the day. They
Really?
thought they should be deputized.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because they were authorized officers. But they were crazy guys, but they used to pull people over. But these days, there's not much regulation. But I mean, there should be novel ideas. Like if Uber is not going to provide wheelchair accessible transport, then they should be charged some sort of, you know, like they should be penalized for that. Such as, you know, their access to the wheelchair accessible taxi the MPT program. You know, if you're not going to pay it, then you should pay some sort of levy to the government to pay for this fleet that we need to actually make available for people, you know, demanding a wheelchair. And who might not want to get into a yellow car, who might want to get into a vehicle that looks a bit like an Uber, yeah? And what's wrong with having a few subsidised Ubers? Because, you know, we've always subsidised the wheelchair accessible taxi market. But, you know, people are, you know, and whether or not they need to be subsidised is another thing. But if you're going to give them access to a fund like that, they should be something that's been cherished by disabled people across the board for many, many years since 1983. Cherished and loved the half price taxi program. If you're going to give a company like Uber access to that, you should at least be demanding something in terms of accessibility. Yeah. So you want to give them access to the money, they should give us access to, like as we wrote in the submission, you know, to this point, you know, Uber has managed to deliver, you know, kittens, you know, donuts, and sometimes even a hot model, you know, to a company you only ride. But it's yet to deliver a wheelchair using passenger to their destination. Yeah. That was in the submission we put to government, which has secured some funding and a commissioner that all didn't amount to much. But it's probably about time the Department of Transport took the CPVV over, in my humble opinion, because it's not functioning as a statutory authority as it used to. So now, that's my opinion. You're recording this, aren't you?
Here, folks. We've got about 5 minutes before we lose the satellite link. I have to free up this account for other use. So 5 minutes to wrap up, folks. Any final comments?
Hey, Naz.
Yeah.
Sounds like it should be pullthechain.org.
No, Change actually, like they're a good organisation. I mean, they get some names or get some awareness out there and get some things happening. So I don't know where we need to make a start, but definitely we need to make a start somewhere in making sure that things don't get worse. Yeah,
it's been a difficult time to make sure things don't get worse with coronavirus. Obviously, there's not been a lot going on with. They did do their best to offer $75 lifting fees to taxi drivers but that's all they know to do is throw money at it. And they need to design a system. But I don't know. We should certainly people should get. They used to run the DSAP disability. Disability Persons Taxi Advisor, DIPTAC, Disability Taxi, Disabled Persons Taxi Advisory Committee, and it was dissolved. It doesn't exist anymore. So the government used to actually try to get the views of people with, you know, needs in terms of accessibility, but they're not doing much in terms of it at the moment. So it probably falls on the, you know, the community to actually give them a bit of a nudge. So
and
if anyone
Matt,
wants to join me,
right, Matt, do we need to sign a petition or something?
you know, we might get to that. We might write another submission. Might get those 12 disability organisations back together again and point out that the government hasn't delivered or hasn't paid attention or hasn't fulfilled its promises.